Oh, sorry, can I start? Yes. Thanks, sorry, jumped the gun. Good morning, my name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government Committee. We have quorum. I would like to now call meeting number 12 to order. Welcome everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in committee room number 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. For the land acknowledgement, I would like to say on behalf of my colleagues and city staff that although we may be meeting in different locations today, the General Government Committee would like to acknowledge the land we're meeting on is their traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We don't have any registered speakers today. I would like to remind members the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with any motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm our minutes from our last meeting of March 26, 2024? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? Carried. We don't have any speakers. I'm gonna flip to my other sheet. Sorry. That's not the one. That's the one I want. All right, we are gonna go through the agenda. Our first item is GG 12.1, amendment to blanket contract number 470-21976 with MSA Safety Sales LLC for the supply and maintenance of Toronto Fire Services self-containing breathing apparatus. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Mantis, all in favor? That carries. GG 12.2, amendment to blanket contract number 470-23252 with Toronto Star Newspapers Limited for the printing of the city's statutory advertising for strategic public and employee communications.
Questions?
I'd like to hold that, please.
Okay. Councillor Holiday, I heard first. GG 12.3, amendment of purchase order number 605-1143 with GHD Limited for professional services for construction contract administration of the D Building Phase 2 construction project. Moved by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.4, amendment to purchase order number 603-8702 with MacLennan, Jaunkalns Miller Architects Limited for the design of the Ethennonnhawahstihnen, Community Center.
I'd like to hold that, please.
Sorry, I heard Councillor Burnside first. GG 12.5, amendment to purchase order number 604-4203 with Concept Naval Experts Maritime Incorporated for the provision of design and construction support services for the delivery of 2 electric ferries and associated shoreside infrastructure for parks, forestry, and recreation. Councillor Burnside's holding number 5. GG 12.6, amendment to purchase order number 605-2316 with CSL Group Limited for the construction of bump outs along Spadina Avenue in the Forest Hill Village Business Improvement Area for economic development and culture. Councillor Holiday is holding 12.6.
Chair, if I may, just for the benefit of staff, I realize it's an EDC report, but the questions I have are in the nature of construction and costing. So just give the staff the heads up.
Okay, all right, thank you. GG 12.7, amendment to purchase order number 6052413 with AECOM Canada Limited for professional engineering services associated with construction contract administration for the disinfection and electrical upgrades project at the Highland Creek Treatment Plant. I will move that. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.8, amendment to purchase order number 6052563 for Drainstar Contracting Limited for the 675 millimeter sanitary sewer and river stabilization at 1240 Sheppard Avenue East for engineering and construction services. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.9, amendment to various purchase orders and blanket contracts with various vendors for corporate learning services providers for people in equity. Can I have a mover? Councillor Holiday is moving number 9. All in favor?
Sorry, I'd like to hold that. I'd like to hold that, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Chang is holding number 9. GG 12.10, non-competitive contract with Yummy Catering Services Incorporated for the non-exclusive supply and delivery of prepared foods to various City of Toronto childcare centers. Can I have a mover?
Also like to hold that, please.
Councillor Chang is holding number 10.
Thank you.
GG 12.11, award of document 425-414-3011 to Aquicon Construction Company Limited for the construction of the Davisville Aquatic Community Center Net Zero Building for Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Division. Can I have a mover? Councillor Mantis, all in favor? That carries. GG 12.12, amendment to non-competitive blanket contract 470-22515 with Joe Johnson Equipment for supply and delivery of original equipment, manufactured parts, and specialized services for warranty and non-warranty repair and maintenance. Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.13, amendment to blanket contracts and non-competitive procurement for the supply of paging and mobile devices, accessories, and services.
I'd like to hold that, please.
Councillor Chang's holding number 13. GG 12.14, new non-competitive contract and amendments to various competitive and non-competitive blanket contracts to maintain shelter services. Councillor Burnside's holding number 14. Number 15, GG 12.15, award of document 43281-29808 to ASCO Construction Toronto Limited, excuse me, for the Scarborough Pump Station Rehabilitation and New Atmospheric Surge Tank Project in Ward 20. Moved by Councillor Mantis. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.16, application for approval to expropriate 320 to 326 Bloor Street West for the Spadina Station Streetcar Platform Extension, Stage 1, Ward 11. Moved by Councillor Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.17, expropriation of property interests near Old Mill Station for easier access. Phase 3 project. This is Stage 2, Ward 3. There's a confidential attachment. Any movers? Holds? Moved by Councillor Mantis. All in favor? That carries. GG 12.18, procurement policy updates resulting from amendments of Toronto's Municipal Code, Chapter 195, procurement. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Chang, all in favor? That carries. GG 12.19, 2900 Warden Avenue, designation of a portion of the property used by Toronto Employment and Social Services as a municipal capital facility. Moved by Councillor Mantis. All in favor? That carries. That's the rundown of our agenda. We will go back to the beginning. So our first hold is GG 12.2, amendment to blanket contract number 470-23252 with the Toronto Star Newspapers Limited for the printing of the City of Toronto statutory advertising. Councillor Holiday, you held it. Questions to staff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. To the staff, I was a little surprised. I think the report says there was only one respondent to the call for prices. Could staff elaborate a little bit about who was invited or who looked at the bid or what we know and why we only got one response?
There we go. Through the chair, thanks for the question. The provincial requirements require us to have an English print daily with home delivery. So when you look at that, it really narrows it. In this case, in previous contracts, we have had it with the Toronto Sun. In this case, the Toronto Sun did not bid, and we awarded to the Toronto Star.
So how many newspapers meet the criteria?
Sorry, Councillor, microphone.
Yeah, it's on. Sound.
There would be really Star, Sun, Globe, National Post could bid on it.
So those are the four, and did all four of them consider it? Do we know? I just don't know the mechanics of the process.
So I can't speak for what went on in their own boardrooms, but they were all invited to participate.
So the four dailies got an invitation, one responded, and they're the winner. Can I just ask more generally, do we have a strategy for the distribution of notifications? I mean, I understand this is about the statutory things, but you know, let's say Councillor's Environment Day. How would one advertise that other than going to Canada Post and getting a flyer, I guess?
So in this particular case, we're talking about statutory ads. For community environment days. Those would be discretionary ads. So in that case, we would look at the intended audience, we would look at available budget, and we would come up with a plan that would best meet the intended result of the campaign.
So what I'm getting at is there's been a decision to stop the circulation of the hyper-local papers.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a business decision by the industry. What do we have left? Do we have any options on getting something to someone's door?
It has, with the closure of Metroland, which is what I think you're referring
Metroland.
to. It's really inspired us to get more creative. We do a lot of digital ads that might be geo-fenced to a certain location. You know, again, trying to reach our target audience. We still do a lot of ethnic print and digital media, if those were the intended audiences. Mm-hmm. But this particular contract is focused on statutory advertising.
So other than the circulars, right, it's a broad category, how do we manage our agreement with either Canada Post or private distributors to actually send out a flyer or a postcard? Do we have that in place? Do we negotiate? How does that work?
We do have a contract with Canada Post. In terms of circulars, I'd have to come back to you with that. No,
just back on the plain old distribution. So Canada Post, are you able to share what the item?
Councillor, we're talking about newspaper advertisement contract. So you're kind of straying away from what's before us.
Chair, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, like our ability to advertise these things is reduced. So we've got the daily, we've got one bidder on a daily, and I just want to know if there's alternatives.
Yeah, so we are constantly seeking different alternatives and trying different things, from connected TV to apps to websites, all different things. Radio, you know, there's still the conventional ways of reaching people as well.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Councillors, your microphone. Could somebody come and look at Councillor Holiday's microphone?
It's actually off.
You're okay now?
Test. Oh, boy. Well, I'm okay with the live mic, but I don't know about you, Chair.
Sorry, could somebody come and look at Councillor Holliday's microphone, please? Sorry, no, my mic, there we go. Any other questions of staff on this side? Councillor Cheng?
Thank you. Through the chair, can you explain, please, what is statutory? So what types of communications is a city bound by that has to land in these print newspapers?
Sorry, I just have to pause the meeting. We're having trouble with the online feed at the moment as well.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
TCH now. Sean Baird is the new CEO. So I think he was named or he started 3 weeks ago. Okay. Yeah. Do you know him? No. He came from Peel. Okay. Yeah.
But I was just through one of the complexes.
Your microphone is on, just so you know. I can hear conversation.
ABCD.
We're almost ready to go again.
Okay. So, was there a graphic scan? And we will resume. Okay, yeah, so you can proceed.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption, everybody. I am calling the meeting back to order. We were on GG 12.2, amendment to blanket contract number 47023252 with the Toronto Star Newspapers Limited for the printing of the city's statutory advertising for strategic, public, and employee communications. We're in the midst of questioning staff. Councillor Chang had the floor. Councillor Chang, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I was first inquiring what constitutes a statutory communications that requires placement in a printed newspaper.
Our colleagues in the city clerk's office will be best to explain that.
Sorry, is your microphone on? Is the light on?
We have to give notice for completed applications, which constitute for amendments of the official plan and to the zoning bylaws, as well as for public meetings, which are committees of council, which are held as a part of the preparation of the request for amendment to the official plan or zoning bylaws. Those are the two categories under the Planning Act, which we have to give public notice for.
So the 2024 budget was almost 1.3 million, and it was fully used by April 11th, 2024. Is that correct?
That is correct.
No, that's the full contract amount for the 5 years, and we're 3 years in and it was used.
And did we overspend because the cost of the print advertising increased, or because we had more statutory requirements?
It's the latter. This contract provides us with a fixed rate for the term of the contract, so it is more than anticipated statutory ad requirements.
And was vacant home tax part of this spend, or was that not covered under statutory?
That, through the chair, the vacant home tax is considered a discretionary ad campaign, not a statutory one.
And the statutory requirements, is that set out by the province? Which which meetings are required to be in print newspapers that reach everyone's doors?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
And so we know that, people subscribing to paper newspapers is declining. More and more people are consuming news online. Is there a conversation with the province on perhaps changing the statutory requirement? I think it is important to get to people through mail and not just through social media, as we saw with vacant home tax. But I am concerned about this statutory requirement, given that we have a changing landscape of how people consume media.
Yes, through the chair, yes, through the province's commenting period on Bill 185, which amends the Planning Act, the city is advocating for alternative measures to provide statutory notice, including directly on the city's website. So we're looking into that.
And I guess, what I think Councillor Holiday was alluding to is what alternative mechanisms are there to get something in print that's not direct mail to people's houses? Is there an exploration of what other alternatives we might propose in our advocacy for Bill 185?
So through the chair, I believe our advocacy is more focused on removing the English daily with home delivery requirement, which as you've said, limits us. So I think if we can get any pieces of that requirement removed, it does give us many more options.
And do we spend a parallel amount on online advertising for these statutory communications, since they are so important that they've been deemed that they have a requirement of how they're distributed across our city?
So with statutory ads, that is the print requirement. If what was being communicated through the statutory ads needed to be augmented, we would, budget permitting, but a lot of these ads are very technical in nature, and they're more about planning and zoning bylaws, and it's just a requirement that we run these ads in a very specific way, as opposed to discretionary campaigns, which tend to be more user-focused, quite transparently with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor
Thank
Chang.
you.
Are there questions of staff? Seeing none, speakers? Councillor Holladay, you held it?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just a couple remarks. I will support the report. This is fine work of the staff to bring forward a way to meet our requirements, but I think this is the idea that only one daily bid on this is a really big red flag, and I think it speaks to a larger issue. I have concerns with the city taking a position that, you know, they will do digital-only advertising. That may suit the needs of many people in the city, but there's a lot of people out there that that don't use digital technology every day. Some that don't use it at all. I think of many seniors that I know, and of those, many might not even use some of the apps that may target it. I'm not saying that we should ignore those technologies and not use them, but to think that they are sort of a universal answer, I can't agree with that, and not in 2024. Perhaps there's not on this report, but another time, there may be some motions needed to take a look at our strategy that's broader. The ending of the work by MetroLand, I think, was a big change in the city. It may be subtle, but it's important, especially for people that follow politics and local issues. And I think a lot of people relied on those little circular newspapers that were free, by the way. So you don't have to subscribe to the paper for it to come to your door. It may not come every day, but it comes at an interval. And that gap has been partly filled, but not completely. I mean, I think in Etobicoke, there's a great publication, the South Etobicoke News. And I wish it was the Etobicoke News and it circulated a little further, because, you know, there's good content work in there, but it's also a free circular that comes out periodically, and you can find it in the waiting room of businesses or restaurants and so on. And, you know, people really look at these papers to get their news, but they also get really local notices. And I encountered this recently when we were trying to think about how to advertise the Environment Day. It wasn't reasonable to put out a postcard to the entire ward, thousands of households, at an enormous cost. And I wish we could have turned to a fairly modest price advertising in a circular that makes it to a lot of doors, but it just doesn't exist any longer. Chair, I don't know what the answer is, but I do worry about this. I do worry about the big picture of the government slipping further and further away from the daily thought or interest of citizens, and really in particular when the government makes big decisions and people just don't know that they're unfolding. Not everything makes it to the evening news or the digital websites of the papers that you may or may not subscribe to. And so this gap needs to be filled, and you know, I hope staff are turning their mind to that. I know they are, and I think we as a committee or as a council should think about this further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holladay. Other speakers on this item? Councillor Chang?
Thank you. I just want to echo my colleagues' comments that we have to be very intentional and creative about how we communicate. We saw the gap with vacant home tax, and that somehow letting our citizens know what's happening is becoming increasingly difficult. We are now in a fragmented landscape of how people consume media. If you ask a young person, I don't even think they watch the evening news. They are getting a lot of their most timely information from TikTok. So we have to diversify how we communicate. I'm glad to hear we are advocating with the requirements with Bill 185, but at large, we do have to think about the diversity of our community and meeting people where they're at. So I don't think it'll ever be one thing. It will be multi-channeled, but certainly I think getting into the mailbox of every household is still the only way you're going to touch every single person. And maybe the city needs to consider quarterly or at least biannually something that encapsulates the many huge decisions that impact people's lives that people don't know about if they're not consuming media the way that we think they are. So I hope that there will be further work on this, and I too will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Other speakers on this item? Seeing none, I need somebody to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Holiday, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is GG 12.4, amendment to purchase order number 6038702 with MacLennan, Jaunkalns, Miller Architects for the design of the Ethennonnhawahstihnen Community Center in Ward 17. Held by Councillor Burnside. Councillor Burnside, questions of staff?
Super duper, thank you. Through you to staff, why did the city engage the parking authority to develop a garage with 192 spaces?
So through the chair, the city had engaged with the previous councillor. The determination was made that an underground parking, given the proximity to the TTC subway station, would be an appropriate use of, TPA's capital resources to help contribute to the construction of the lot and also to the operation of the lot, given that the users of that parking are not just for the community center, but they're also parking there for the TTC station.
And that makes total sense. Would you be applying that rationale for other community centers?
I think we
might be in close proximity to transit, like maybe the Ontario line and the LRT, the crosstown.
Through the chair, I think each community center would need to look at sort of the business case and rationale for underground parking and the potential operating model for that parking. But yeah, yes, we would take a look at that based on the capital capacity of the project and whether or not, if it was a TPA lot, there was a capital investment being willing to be made toward that lot.
Okay, thanks. And I believe the final cost of this community center is about 80 million. Is that correct?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Sorry, I believe the final price tag for this community center is 80 million.
We're just gonna have to verify that number.
Okay. Well, and while they're verifying, I was just wondering what the original estimate was. And I can go offline if you don't, if that takes time.
Sorry, through the chair. We'll come back to you offline with that or verify it
okay,
for the end of the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Other questions on this item? Sorry, Councillor Chang, questions?
Thank you. Through the chair, I see here that this increased purchase order amendment is due to issues relating to adverse weather, COVID-19 pandemic, and subcontractor performance. And I'm just wondering, is there a plan to try and recoup some of this additional cost if the subcontractor's performance was part of the reason why we're paying for something that's now already built out?
Through the chair, I'm going to ask my colleague here, Mr. Gressley Jones, to respond.
So as it relates to this purchase order amendment, this was reviewed in the context of the contract and deemed to be acceptable and fair in terms of the work they accomplished and undertook in an extended timeline resulting from the issues you identified. We wouldn't be reviewing trying to recoup these specific costs as it relates to any other performance components.
So even though subcontractor performance was one of the reasons why this contract is extended, we're going to cover the cost of those whatever delays arose because of the subcontractor.
We are looking at other subcontractors within this project, and that would be determined on a case-by-case basis, but this one in isolation has been deemed acceptable and appropriate.
Oh, so sorry, my question was like the subcontractor that caused the delays is not the one that is getting paid in this amendment. Was it other subcontractors that caused the delay that was experienced? Just to clarify.
This was ultimately a very complex project in which the site conditions were different than originally anticipated. There were changes necessary within that. So we are looking at the other subcontractors' performance. That is being evaluated, and any costs necessary to be recouped of those subcontractors will be considered. Hopefully that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's a common theme for a lot of contracts that come to GGC is site conditions were not what we expected. And I'm wondering what kind of learnings could we apply to the new Davisville? I see there's a $60 million community center being built in one of the other motions here at GGC. And I'm just wondering, you know, do we expect that 60 to also creep up to 80 as we move forward? Because generally there's always surprises when we put shovels in the ground.
Maybe through the chair, I'll start, and then certainly if there's anything to add. So we are looking at, you know, any opportunity we can to obviously have better site evaluations at the outset of projects to mitigate, you know, experiences like this. Part of cost escalation is also, particularly with this project, because of the timing in which it was constructed, was right in the middle of the pandemic. And as we know, a lot of capital projects that were occurring at that time were subject to cost escalations as a result of a whole host of issues related to supply chain and, you know, difficult construction that was just being impacted through the pandemic. I think that was a significant contributing factor to the Ethennonnhawahstihnen Community Recreation Center and Library. You know, and as we, of course, take those learnings, we will apply them to future projects like Davisville in an effort to be more efficient in the way that they're delivered from a cost perspective.
And with the addition of paid parking tied to the community center, is there, are we tracking the impact of having paid parking in a neighborhood where traditionally people don't pay for parking? Is there an impact on the space usage and or class registrations?
Through the chair, I mean, we'd have to engage with TPA in terms of what their metrics are. I do know they measure, you know, revenue and use of parking spaces. So it's the lot is in their control to manage. From our perspective, it's providing an important value add to users of the recreation center. Because of this particular area, there just isn't a lot of close proximity parking, and it would make it otherwise quite difficult to use the center without the availability of that lot.
Sorry, just to clarify, my question was the impact
last question,
on,
Councillor.
yeah, the impact on how much people register for the programming in the center and the use of the space in the center, not the parking spots. Because I do hear from some moms, they are hesitant to sign up for classes there because it adds an additional cost for them if they, you know, have to go there on a weekly basis.
Thanks, okay, thanks for the clarification. We'll take a look at how to evaluate that as part of our sort of service evaluations that we're doing at the center. I can't say it's a very busy facility, but we could take specifically some questions around, how that parking is supporting or potentially impeding people's use.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Burnside, you held the item. Did you want to speak? Do you want to move the recommendations?
Sure, why not?
All right. I can't think of why not. All in favor? Sure. Carried. Our next item, I think Councillor Burnside, you're getting the floor again. GG 12.5 amendment to purchase order number 604-4203 with Concept Naval Experts Maritime Incorporated for the provision of design and construction support services for the delivery of 2 electric ferries and associated shoreside infrastructure for park forestry and recreation. Howie, can you get shorter titles for reports?
I will work right on that.
Councillor Burnside, you have the floor. Questions to staff?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to staff. So you're replacing 2. Are they both going to be electric? Yeah? Total cost of the ferries?
So through the chair, we have $85 million allocated in the capital budget for the replacement of the 2 ferries. We don't know the final cost as we're still concluding the NRFP process.
Do you anticipate using them year-round?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Do you anticipate, I'm unusually quiet, do you anticipate using these electric ferries year-round, or would they be used in the I'll say the height of the season, not the shoulder or off-season?
So through the chair, the first ferry replacement is to replace the car passenger ferry, which is the year-round ferry. The second electric ferry, there wouldn't be a business case to necessarily use all the ferries year-round, and I'd have to ask Jesse if it has the capability of going through snow. It does? Okay, nice. So it can be used, it's just whether it needs to be used.
Okay, and it says in the report that the majority of traffic is May to September. What does that mean in terms of percentages? Sorry, I can't hear you now.
No, the mics. We'd have to get back to you on what that represents as a percent.
Okay, that'd be, maybe we could do that in the same meeting as the other one?
As the other one, sure.
Okay, thanks. So when the main attractions are closed, such as Centerville and, so I guess the yacht clubs and whatnot, after September, what is the frequency of the ferries?
So the ferry moves to its fall-winter schedule. We only have 1 boat running from November until we get into the spring schedule. Again, I'd have to circle back with you on the number of trips per day for the ferry in the fall and in the winter. But it's certainly the reduced service is based on reduced demand because of, as you note, the reduced activations that are occurring.
So what is the demand? Like, what are people going over there for if everything's closed?
Well, so we have a legislated requirement to provide ferry services to the island, both for the Toronto Island residents as well as the TDSB school. There is passive use of the park year-round, right? So that is the demand.
Okay, and then in terms of pollution, how much, if you're going with the electric as opposed to these diesel things that are spewing right into the water, what is the impact? Or the improvement, or in terms of the environmental impact of the electric?
Yes. Sorry, through the chair, the intention of the electric ferries is to reduce the use of diesel-generated vessels and to help council achieve its net zero target. So obviously, as you note, it would reduce the effect of pollutants in the harbor through the electrification of our ferry vessels.
Well, no, I understand that it's going to be a reduction, but I was trying to understand what that reduction is. Like
the measured reduction.
The measured, like, kind of, we should be measuring things. And I'm just trying to understand what that actually means. Because I understand these things are like ancient, and they must have a huge impact, not only from the burning, but what they're throwing into the actual water. And I'm just trying to understand. I would assume in this business case for, what are you saying, 85 million plus, that we would have those numbers.
So what I would suggest is, certainly the intention of this report is specific to the design modifications that we're making, and we'd be happy to make sure that we're really speaking to that quite clearly when we bring the award report forward in terms of what those ferries are and the benefits they're providing.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Are there questions of staff on this item? Councillor Cheng?
Thank you. Can you confirm, please, that these 2 electric ferries, are they replacing 2 of the 4 ferries that are currently in circulation?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And when we use an electric ferry, can they run a whole day without charging, or do we have to charge in between the service?
So there will be charging requirements, and part of the capital project will involve the required infrastructure on the dock side and where required on the island side to ensure that when recharging is necessary, that it can be done and done in a way that doesn't impact our sort of ferry service.
So do we foresee that there would be some reduction in capacity, whereas the non-electric ferries can provide continuous service, or perhaps refueling is a lot faster? Would there be a reduced capacity given that there has to be built-in charging time?
Through the chair, so we actually anticipate that the capacity will increase. The major limiting factor for capacity is actually the speed at which we can load and unload the ferries. These ferries have a wider throat. It allows more people to load in a more timely fashion, and the charging would be aligned with the time assumptions for that activity to take place. So we anticipate that there will be a significant improvement in that capacity and the timeliness.
So there will be a final report when we decide which ferries, and as well as a cost of installing the necessary charging infrastructure on both sides of the route. And then will that report also include fuel savings to balance out that long-term investment that we're making in this infrastructure?
Yes, we can ensure that those details are captured when we return to GGC for the award of the NRFP.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions on this item?
I have one.
Sorry?
Chair? I have a
question. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. No, just quickly, you may have answered it, but I just want to clarify. How long can one of these vessels run on a single charge? And how long does it take to charge it when it's required to be charged?
Through the chair, I'd prefer to bring that information forward when we're bringing the award. This is part of the due diligence that we're doing through the NRFP process. The requirements that we set out were to, minimize service impact as a result of any, recharging, but we'd have to bring the details back through the award report.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a critical point to have that information. So, and when will we get that information, did you say?
So we're in the final stages of the NRFP process, and certainly hoping to bring the report back in Q3 of this year.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crisanti. Speakers on this item? Councillor Burnside, you held the item? Move the recommendations? All right, thank you, Councillor Burnside. I just want to thank staff for all their work to date. As a regular ferry user in the summer and in the fall, you hear lots of comments about the ferries are nice and quaint and antique looking, but I do know from talking with staff when I use them, the amount of work and time they put into making sure they look nice and quaint and antique looking. And I know from staff, they're looking forward to having electric ferries and them being more environmentally friendly and more efficient. So I'll be supporting the recommendations as well. So all in favor of the recommendations? And that carries. Thank you. Our next item is 12.6. Sorry. How did I lose that? Thank you. Thanks, Matthew. 12.6, amendment to contract order number 605-2316 with CSL Group Limited for the construction of bump outs along the Spadina Avenue in the Forest Hill Village Business Improvement Area for Economic Development and Culture, held by Councillor Holiday. Councillor Holiday, questions of staff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wondered if staff could give us a little bit of an overview of the scope of the work. And then as I understand it, it was about $38,000 because a hydrovac truck was required. And can you just help me understand the costs of doing this type of work? Because I think it was 3 bump outs. Do we have someone that can talk about that?
Yes, through the chair, it's Rebecca Condon, manager of the Business Improvement Area Office. Thank you for the question. So this is a bump out project, part of our streetscape cost share program. So we're sharing this project with the Forest Hill BIA for a series of 5 bump outs that were part of their streetscape master plan design. This report is related to unexpected underground infrastructure that was discovered, and the decision was made to hydrovac and to remove the debris and other things that were found.
Do we have any sense of the units and the hours involved and how many hydrovac trucks and so on? I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around the $38,000 increase and, you know, how that translates to a hydrovac. I know it's technical, and
Yes.
I try to, and I appreciate that EDC prepared the report, but I don't know if there's anyone available to talk about the construction element.
I'm checking with staff now to see if we have an answer for you, Counselor.
Okay, and if it's, Mr. Chair, I don't really have a problem with the overall report. I mean, it's before us. I'm quite happy if I take these questions offline with staff, and I'll just be clear. I'd love to have a bit of an analysis from a quantities here so I can understand the cost of the construction incurred. I don't think it's going to affect my support of the report. So if that's sufficient for the meeting, we can just follow that up another time.
Yes, happy to follow up. Thank you. And I did get from staff, sorry, 1 hydrovac truck, and it's a 1.5 week project to complete.
Okay.
But I can provide further detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Cheng, you have questions on this?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I was wondering, can you explain a little bit more about the streetscape upgrade program that cost shares with BIAs? Because this is very interesting that a BIA is doing something that a lot of residents ask for from a traffic calming perspective, but then because it's with the BIA, now there's a cost sharing with the city.
Sorry, Councillor Cheng, that's kind of outside of the scope of what we're discussing, the amendment to a contract. So
Right, but I'm trying to understand.
If you want to ask for an explanation of the program, you could do that at economic development or contact economic development staff, but we're talking, that's outside the scope of what we're talking about.
Okay,
we're here to amend a contract.
I'm just trying to understand the nature of the contract, how this fits into our budget, but.
Yep, so that's outside the scope of the conversation.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, do you have further questions?
I guess, how does this impact the budget, this cost increase?
Thank you for through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. It is accounted for in our, as part of our annual cost share budget. We're able to accommodate, the BIA does share our 50-50 with our unit.
So is the BIA also cost sharing this increase?
Yes, that's correct, through the chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions of staff on this item? Speakers? Councillor Holiday, you held the item? You're fine, moving the recommendation. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is 12.9. GG 12.9, amendment to various purchase orders and blanket contracts with various vendors for corporate learning services providers for people and equity, held by Councillor Cheng. Councillor, questions of staff?
Thank you. I'm trying to understand, is it standard that we enter into long-term contracts or a suite of trainings when I do like the landscape of training is constantly changing, and so we're kind of prescribing that the whole city is using the suite of training that has been determined by this division?
Thank you, Councillor Cheng, through the chair. We as the city enter into RFP and procurement with a number of vendors for both online and in-person training. The purpose of going into RFP is to be fiscally prudent and also make sure that we are looking at the procurement of vendors through an equity lens. This is a small subset of vendors that we do use for the city. These courses are tried and true. The kind of courses that we're offering with respect to leadership don't typically change within a short period of time. And as I said, they're very much leadership focused.
So we're setting a standard through training across our city, and are these used across divisions?
Yes, these courses that we have up here now are used across 15 divisions in the city.
I'd love to learn more about them offline sometime. Thank you.
We're happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, speakers on this item. Councillor Cheng, you held the item.
I'll move the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cheng's moving the recommendations on GG 12.9. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is 12.10. Non-competitive contract with Yummy Catering Services Incorporated for the non-exclusive supply and delivery of prepared foods for various City of Toronto childcare centers, held by Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cheng, questions of staff?
Yeah, just a quick question. So this is a contract extension for 11 months, and I'm wondering when will the RFP be launched and how many companies do we expect would bid on such a contract?
Councillor Chang, and through the chair, the RFP has already been launched. We are working with purchasing to have that underway. We'll go through the competitive process. So, you know, I'm not sure how many people will bid on that, but we will certainly go through the process and use the criteria to select an appropriate caterer.
Great, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I'll move the recommendation if no one else has a question.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cheng is moving the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 12.13, amendment to blanket contracts and non-competitive procurement for the supply of paging and mobile devices, accessories, and services, held by Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cheng, questions of staff?
Thank you. Just wanted to inquire, I see here that we have contracts with Rogers, TELUS, Bell, BACA, and Paging, and I'm wondering why and how we decide on the distribution across the 3 mobile services.
Through the chair, the city has opted to use the provincial VOR counselor, and within the VOR, we have the option to use one of the vendors that was provided as a successful vendor. Rogers is the primary, and then the others we use mainly for contingency purposes, especially for emergency services in the event that there's an outage with the primary vendor.
Great, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers? Councillor Holiday's, sorry, you'll move it? Okay. Councillor Holiday's moving the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. And then our next item, GG 12.14, new non-competitive contracts amendments to various competitive and non-competitive blanket contracts to maintain shelter services in all wards, held by Councillor Burnside. Councillor Burnside, questions of staff? Yeah, thank you. No microphone?
No, there we go.
There you go.
It was on, but anyway. Are we getting full reimbursement from the other levels of government? I'm trying to figure out where that whole thing landed.
Yeah, so through the chair to you, Councillor Burnside, in terms of the contracts that are before you today, in the budget year 2024, there would be almost $40 million of expenses against these contracts. We expect that about half of those expenses will be eligible for our reimbursement through the Interim Housing Assistance Program from the federal government in support of our refugee response. As you will know also, Councillor Burnside, our New Deal conversations and results have brought to the table, in addition, $200 million to support the delivery of shelter services in the city.
Okay, so, but sorry, I'm a little confused still. Okay, so half, and then you have this other money. Would that cover the other half completely?
So through the chair to you, Councillor, won't cover the whole half, but certainly it's a significant contribution from the provincial government to the delivery of shelter services in the city. I could get you a more defined answer in terms of what the total budget contribution in 2024 will be from the province and the federal government, but there will be significant contributions to these costs from the province as well.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be helpful. And then I noticed the $3 million was for the 4-point Sheraton Vaughan, which is on the north side of Steele, so I presume that is out of the city. Is that correct?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, that's correct. This hotel we are using to support families, many of them refugee families that are in need of shelter, but we're unable to immediately accommodate in the shelter system. We are paying for their accommodation. And again, significant amount of these costs would be eligible for reimbursement from the federal government.
But on some level, we're paying from city finances, whatever that level is, and I guess that'll be determined later, for people to live outside of the city. So we're we're assuming a responsibility that I'm outside of the city, no?
So through the chair to you, Councillor, these rooms are just north of the boundaries of the City of Toronto. You're correct. It's really about the availability of hotel space within the city. And so, this is the next nearest group of rooms that we're able to find to accommodate the immediate sheltering needs of these families.
Right, but have we approached the municipality of Vaughan to ask for their contribution? I'm kind of unclear as to how we're taking responsibility. And then my second question to that, follow-up to that, would be, are any municipalities, paying for space in Toronto for refugees that they, who may have gone to their agencies.
Yeah, through the chair to you, Councillor, I can't tell you I'm aware of other municipalities or regions paying for sheltering costs in Toronto. I can tell you we work very closely with our GTHA partners on this refugee response. These families are coming directly to our central intake phone service in Toronto for service in Toronto. We're unable to meet their immediate needs here in the city, and so we are temporarily sheltering them at this hotel in Vaughan.
And how far outside of the city would you look? I know it's about a block, but would you look up to Caledon or Orangeville, or like what is the, I'm trying to understand, is there any sort of geographical constraint, or is it you come to Toronto, you apply at Toronto, so we'll cover those expenses wherever we have to throughout the province? Or is there like a cutoff?
So through the chair to you, Councillor, the work we do collectively with our regional partners is to support these folks coming here for sheltering costs. This is an anomaly for us to be looking for rooms in Vaughan, but it's due to the inavailability of hotel rooms here in Toronto. I'll tell you, we're currently sheltering 596 families in this program. And again, of those 432 families are refugee claimant families. All of those expenses will be eligible for reimbursement from the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Councillor Holiday?
I think just one. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tanner, you mentioned that people call the central intake line to seek shelter space. Do we screen or check or even know if the individual is actually inside the 416 when they call? Or are there potentially people that are in the 905 region calling to Toronto to get shelter space?
Yes, through the chair to you, Councillor Holiday, we do ask those questions, and it is an eligibility criteria that we are only providing shelter to those folks who are calling us from the 416 area. We would refer folks outside of the 416 area to the appropriate region they're calling from.
Okay. I understand, I think from previous discussions at council, that individuals often arrive through Pearson Airport, which is in the 905. How do the people get from the 905 to Toronto and then into the Toronto system? Like, what's the bridge?
Yes, so through the chair to you, Councillor Holiday, we do receive people directly from Pearson Airport that show up either at our 129 Peter Street Assessment and Referral Center, or are calling us after they have landed at a drop-in center, a church, or another community organization in the city. I'd say Peel is also in the receiving end of a significant number of people coming from the airport. Part of our regional strategy as GTHA communities and our advocacy with the federal government is to set up a permanent refugee reception center. And there are plans underway. Peel has a proposal on the table to site that location in Peel. And it would be one place where people would be directed to once they arrive to get connected to services and supports, and hopefully then connected to one of the regions to support their needs, and not a direct transport to Toronto. Unfortunately, right now, there's very much an uncoordinated system upon which people have to navigate when they arrive.
Is there not an intermediary supplier or organization that are helping people between literally stepping off a plane at the airport to a place for some amount of time, and then some people will end up into the gateway for the Toronto shelter system? I just seem to recall that from the previous discussion at council. I just don't remember the details.
Yes, through the chair to you, Councillor Holiday. So the Canadian Red Cross offers what's called a first contact program.
Okay.
It's a phone service, though. They do have an office, but they do not provide overnight accommodation. That's what's really missing from this response, is the one central place where people can go, receive an appropriate intake, understand what their needs are, stay for 1 or 2 days until they are linked to available space, whether in Toronto or in another GTHA community, or frankly, in a municipality across the province.
So this is what I'm getting at, is that particular function, that's not in this report then? Like, it's not contemplated in this package of services?
That's correct.
Okay, so if that occurs, would that happen within the boundary of 416 physically, and then would that then gateway or make everyone eligible for the shelter system here?
So through the chair to you, Councillor, the proposal that's on the table that we have issued a letter of support for would see that site opening in Peel Region, very close to the airport, very accessible from the airport. Right. It would be our commitment to work with Peel, though, to receive some of those individuals, but certainly not everyone that arrives through Pearson should be landing in the City of Toronto.
Or you wouldn't have enough money in this report to deal with it?
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Other questions of staff on this item? Councillor Cheng?
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering, the 596 families currently being housed in hotel shelters, how long has the average stay been? Because there is mention that, due to the lack of affordable housing, people are kind of getting stuck in the shelter.
So through the chair to you, Councillor Cheng, the families that I'm referring to on our waiting list or bridging program, if you will, have not actually landed in the city's shelter system. We are paying for them to receive accommodation until space is available in the shelter system. The average length of stay for those families in this bridging program is approaching 6 months at this point.
So this hotel in Vaughan, how long have we been sheltering people there?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, I need to understand that or find that out specifically for this hotel. I can tell you the bridging program has been in effect since borders reopened after the pandemic, and I would say probably, in the spring of 2022.
And the bed count in the bridging program does not count towards our shelter beds.
Yeah, great question through the chair to you, Councillor Chang. What we refer to is, I'll tell you, last night we sheltered 10,000 people within the shelter system, and there were an additional almost 2,000 people outside of the shelter system in the bridging program that we're talking about.
So it's kind of an extension of our shelters, especially if they're staying for 6 months. It sounds like a shelter.
Through the chair to you, Councillor, what is not provided are the wraparound supports, catering. We're providing solely accommodation to the families that are in this program.
Okay. And is there, are we tracking service levels across the GTA? Because I know, for example, and not in the GTA, but one of the refugee claimants in my neighborhood mentioned that he actually took the effort to get to New Brunswick. And when he was there, he realized there were no services, the support wasn't great. And he actually then came back to Toronto into our shelter system, where he identified that he would get better support. And so, because we're so close to so many other municipalities, do we have some way of gauging what the service levels are there and their capacities? Because I'd like to understand, are people hearing where supports are better? Like, is there some degree of choice that people are making based on what they're hearing of what kinds of services are being provided?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Cheng, certainly people have choice to travel and attempt to settle in the community of their choice. We are working again very closely with our GTHA regional partners to all come to the table and provide supports, and I think there is support for newcomer and refugee populations throughout the GTHA. I think we'd also like to see the federal government continue to build capacity in communities right across this country, out of province, perhaps in New Brunswick, as you note. You know, what we also try to let people know that are coming to Toronto that may have other cultural or community connections here is that it is a very difficult place to establish housing and really one of the most expensive places in the country to do so. So we try to share as much information as we can with people, but certainly they have a choice of putting down roots in the community that they choose.
So do we know if other municipalities in our vicinity have also created bridging hotel shelter opportunities?
Yeah, through the chair to you, Councillor Chang, certainly Peel, which is probably most impacted by this issue. You know, they're running a shelter system they would describe as 430% over capacity. So they also are leaning into hotel rooms for accommodation and other programs wherever they can locate them.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I know it's not easy. It's a very intense situation that you have to deal with every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Other questions of staff on this item?
Chair?
Sorry.
Vince here, Chair.
Councillor Crisanti, you have questions?
I do, thank you. So,
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, yes, I want to thank you as well. This has been, this is a lot of hard work. And so can you tell me, just to pick up where Councillor Holiday sort of left off, so refugees, families, individuals arrive at the airport. Did you say there is or there isn't a point of contact? So they're now in the building, they arrive at the airport. What guidance do they have? What do they do? Where do they go?
Through the chair to you, Councillor. So unfortunately, there's not a well-coordinated response. So, you know, people share information perhaps from individuals that have arrived previously. Certainly the Red Cross is advertised as their first contact program as a resource that people can connect with. Red Cross would then work with various shelter systems to see if they could access accommodation if that was the need. But I think your question is asking if there is a well-coordinated response. My answer would be there's not.
There's not, yeah. And yeah, I knew the answer to that. I just wanted to make sure everyone knows the answer to that, and which is extremely unfortunate. So so these refugees come to our country, they arrive at Pearson. Who invited them in? Are they invited by family? Are they invited by friends? Are they invited by the federal government to come to our country?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, so you know, the individuals that we're talking about here are folks who are refugee claimants. So they arrive in the country and with the intent of making a claim for refugee status based on, you know, circumstances that they are facing in their home or country of origin that place them at risk. These are not individuals that are sponsored refugees or supported by the federal government to come here. We obviously are not aware or of the volume of people until they arrive, and the numbers are higher than they ever have been in the past. And so we do our best to work with other government partners and respond as best we can.
Thank you. Are there discussions back to the coordinated effort with all three levels of government? Are there discussions currently going on to have a reception area right at the airport for individuals arriving to Canada?
Sorry, Councillor Crisanti. Sorry, Councillor, sorry to interrupt you and sorry to interrupt staff, but you're getting away from the nature of the item before us.
No worries. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'm good. I'll take it offline.
Okay, thank you. Speakers on this item? It's held by Councillor Burnside. Councillor Burnside, move the recommendations.
I certainly will, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of the recommendations on number 12.14? All in favor? And that carries. And I believe we have bills? No, we do not. No bills? We're done? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Holiday, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to all the staff for all of your hard work. Very much appreciated. And
thank you, Chair.
suggestion.